my friends I'm not coming, 'cause there's a good chance to see you leaving again. I keep my wish 'cause I hate to sin, but you'd be crying if you knew how I've been. Now I'm in this altered state of mind. I just don't know how to leave it behind. Got away with murder this time. Clearly you are doing just fine. Altered state of mind. I just don't know how to leave it behind. I told my friends I'm headed home, 'cause I just might lose my mind. And I can try and hold it in, but only hope there's an ounce of strength to find. Now I'm in this altered state of mind. I just don't know how to leave it behind. Got away with murder this time. Clearly you are doing just fine.
The first two units we talked about the claims process for a workers' compensation case. One of the, or actually the first step in the claims process has to do with the injury. The injury occurs. There's a notification received that an injury has occurred. That injury notification or the injury incident needs to be evaluated. I want to talk a little bit more about injury evaluation because it is such an important part of the process. So let's go ahead and jump right into that discussion. If any of these immediate symptoms that I'm going to show you on this slide show up, it's my opinion that they need to see a medical provider. The individuals most likely to be making that evaluation to send them to a medical services provider will be their frontline supervisor, the foreman, the superintendent, the lead person, those types of individuals that directly supervise the workers, and also the safety manager. Oftentimes when there's an injury that occurs, everybody calls the safety manager. Everybody looks for the safety manager. But if the safety manager is not available for whatever reason, or if it's an immediate decision needs to be made, then it's going to be that frontline supervisor. The frontline supervisor is really the most important person in the life of the worker, and the most important person in many ways when it comes to safety. Again, the top management is most important, but that frontline supervisor is right there with upper management as far as being important for safety and everything related to safety. But these are symptoms that I'm going to show you that, in my opinion, need a medical evaluation. May not always be emergency situations. There may not actually be visible symptoms in some cases. But certain types of incidents, even if there aren't visible symptoms, we need to err on the side of caution and get them checked out. We are not doctors. We don't want to pretend to be doctors. We don't want the responsibility of being a doctor. We don't want to be the safety manager that said, I think he's okay, then he goes home and dies that night because he had a head injury, had a severe concussion, and he looked fine. I mean, you can look fine with a severe concussion if you don't know the signs to look for. And there have been cases where concussion victims have died in their sleep because they didn't receive the medical evaluation, they didn't receive the proper care and treatment for that injury, for the incident that they experienced. And that is at the top of my list. If there is any kind of head injury, they need to get checked out, because there may be stuff going on internally that we can't see. We're not qualified to see. We don't have the instruments to see. Even if we had the instruments that allowed us to do a thorough evaluation, we wouldn't know how to use those instruments. Again, we're not doctors. So if there's a head injury, get them checked out. Back injury, same thing. It could be an internal thing that we're not able to diagnose thoroughly without x-rays, without MRIs, without the technology that's available to look inside. And a lot of times a back injury, they seem like a little thing in the beginning, but they can turn into a big deal very quickly. I mentioned back injuries in an earlier video in this unit, how we think maybe it's a muscle pull and it's okay, but it turns out to be a disc injury or more serious type of back injury. Back injuries also. Now, that's my policy. If you got a back injury or head injury, we're going to get you checked out. And it may cost the company, it may cost our insurance a little bit to get you checked out, but it's well worth it for your health. And that should be our attitude as safety managers. It's not about recordable injuries, it's about the worker's health and safety. That should be our first priority. And if we're not sure about something, if there's a potential for invisible injury, then we need to get them checked out. Any kind of high energy incident, a fall, a worker takes a fall, get them checked out. A worker gets struck by a vehicle, get them checked out. And I've got 2 stories that deal with both of those. We had and some of you, pardon me if you've heard these stories before, but they're worth repeating. We had a worker fall off of the cab of a crane about 12 feet. It was a small crane, so he's only up about 12 feet. But they were setting up the gantry on top of the crane, and the gantry is a piece of the crane that folds up and down. And they were pinning it up into position. It wasn't pinned yet. It fell back down, hit the worker in the chest, knocked him off the crane. Landed flat on his back on the ground. And he didn't want to go to the doctor. He did not want to go to the doctor. His foreman called me and said, "This guy doesn't want to go. Can you come take him?" So I went and took him and talked him into going. You don't go in ordering people around that just fell off a crane. So, but you talk reasonably to people and, hey, let's get you checked out, buddy. Just want to make sure you're not taking something serious home with you. Make sure there's not any broken bones or some internal damage that we're not able to see or that you're not feeling right now. So we took him in, got him checked out, x-rayed, everything was fine, everything was negative. Wasn't a recordable injury. The only cost we had was the cost of the examination and the examination procedures. It was well worth the money for that peace of mind, knowing that he really was okay. The other incident that I'll share with you when it comes to high energy incidents didn't turn out so well. And I was not involved with this. I'm not going to name the name of the company, but I'll give you some hints. It's a company I talk a lot about. I think they're a great company. They have a great safety program, but they screwed the pooch on this one, the decision that was made. It was the last company I worked for. But the incident involved a worker who was struck by another vehicle passing through the work zone. The worker was standing at the back of a company truck. A vehicle passing through the work zone ran through the cones, struck the worker, pinning him up against the company vehicle. The district safety manager, well, let's see how he is tomorrow. The dumbass is worried about a recordable injury. The guy just got hit by a car, and the dumbass is worried about a recordable injury. And he wanted to wait until the next day to get him. Let's see how he is overnight. Well, he fucking could have died overnight. It was ridiculous. When I heard about this, it almost made me not want to work for that company when I heard this story from another safety manager. But that guy shouldn't have been any question. The district safety manager should not have been making that call. The only call that district safety manager should have made was get him into the hospital as soon as possible, or call an ambulance. The guy was just run over by a car. Actually, worse than being run over by a car, he was pinned between two vehicles. And come to find out, he had serious internal injuries. The last I heard, the guy will never be right again because of the internal injuries. He has to, his urinary tract was all screwed up. His digestive system was all screwed up. The last I heard, he carried around a bag that he peed in because of issues related to this incident. We have a safety professional, which I don't even think of this person as a safety professional, making that irresponsible decision. Because he's worried about a recordable injury. Recordable injuries have nothing to do with the well-being of the worker. It might make the safety manager look good or the district safety manager look good if you don't have any recordable injuries. But if you have somebody die on your watch because all you were worried about was recordable injury, that's unforgivable. You should never be allowed to work as a safety professional again. And I know I'm ranting here, but that's just, when I heard that, it was all I could do just to not scream. If there's any incidents where there's high energy involved, fall, a struck by, certainly it's so fucking no-brainer. If a guy gets hit by a car, you take him into the clinic to get looked at. You don't wait until the next day to see if he's okay. That is, again, it's just mind-boggling that was the decision that was recommended. Now, I should add to that, the safety manager ignored him, did the right thing, and took him in. And again, the last I heard, he'll never be the same again because of that incident. And if he hadn't received treatment, proper diagnosis and treatment as soon as possible, he may have not survived the internal injuries that were caused in that incident. Any vehicular accident, fender benders, not necessarily. I'm talking about a high-energy fender or a high-energy vehicular accident. Also, you'd want to get them checked out. A rollover type of incident, certainly get them checked out. A lot of people walk away from rollovers. They don't want to be checked out, but take them in and get them checked out. Had an incident like that. It was a rollover in a company truck. The guy said he was okay, but hey, let's get you checked out just to make sure you are okay. We can't see what's going on inside, so let's get you checked out. Now we're getting into some symptoms, some actual visible symptoms that should be checked out. If there's any kind of visible deformation, a knot on your leg, maybe they were struck by a pipe. Maybe a pipe rolled down and struck them in the shin. There's a big knot on their shin. Let's get that x-rayed. Let's make sure there's not a broken bone in there. It may just be a knot. It may just be a swelling. It may not be broken, but we don't know that. So let's get it checked out. If there's any protrusions, abdominal protrusions are indicative of a hernia. Get those checked out. And I've got another story about this. Was also the third company I worked at. Worker had a hernia. It was obvious. It was an umbilical hernia, and everybody wanted to ignore it. And I finally encouraged the worker to, hey, just let's get this taken care of. Go to your doctor. Don't say it's work related, but you need to get this checked out and fixed. It was a simple fix. Surgery for an umbilical hernia is pretty easy. and it was all taken care of. It ended up not being a recordable injury. And see, in that case, we were not sure it was work related. It could have been the worker didn't know that it was work related. He didn't know how it happened or when it developed. It could have been cutting firewood at home or snowmobiling. This was out in Colorado. It could have been 100 different things that caused the strain on the abdominal wall that caused the umbilical hernia. But any kind of deformation, protrusions, knots, get it checked out. Excessive bleeding that you can't stop. And I'm going to speed up a little bit here. Abnormal discoloration. Now, a little bruise that's localized, no big deal. But if you've got a bruise that's purple and yellow and brown, that's not a normal bruise. And if it covers a wide area, get it checked out. If the worker is experiencing a level of pain that makes it difficult for them to concentrate, if they're not able to function normally because of the level of pain, get it checked out. Loss of consciousness. Again, no brainer. Somebody passes out in the factory, on the job site, in the fast food joint, if it's a fast food operation. Loss of consciousness, no brainer. Get them checked out. Don't know what's going on there. Second or third degree burns. A second degree burn is blistering. A third degree burn, actual tissue damage and tissue loss. Now, first degree burn, just redness and minor discomfort, you don't necessarily need that's first aid. But if you have the blistering or loss of tissue, that is a medical situation. Also, if the burn is a chemical burn, that would be a medical evaluation scenario also. Eye injuries. Worker gets something in their eye. We're not sure what's in their eye. It's we can use eye wash to try to wash it out, try to provide some relief for the discomfort that they're feeling. But there could be microscopic slivers of steel or other material that's in their eye that's causing damage to their cornea. Go ahead and let the medical professionals do that evaluation, and they have better methods for treating, better tools for treating eye injuries. And another thing about eye injuries, the reason don't take any chances with those, because we only got 2 of them, and they haven't figured out how to do a transplant yet. We're working on it, and eventually I think they'll be able to transplant eyes or do a robotic eye. A lot of research on robotic eyes right now, but we're still a ways from that. So it's got to take care of our eyes. Any kind of eye injury should be checked out. Radiation exposure, not going to happen in most workplaces, but if there is radiation exposure, there can be invisible damage done. Contact with electricity. Worker receives a shock. Not if they're passed out, electrocuted. Electrocution is death. But if they receive a shock, electricity can pass through the body, do internal damage that we're not able to see, and the worker may feel fine, and they may be fine. But let the doctor decide that. We shouldn't be deciding that. Chemical exposures, and that's a big topic right there. If they're exposed to known hazardous chemicals, whether it's on their skin or they ingest it or they inhale vapors or fumes or smokes, go ahead and have that evaluated as well. Severe dehydration. Severe dehydration, a sign of that would be they try to urinate and nothing comes out. They have no urine. They're not sweating. If they do produce urine, the urines are really dark yellow color, almost an orange color urine. That's severe dehydration. That's that level of dehydration. We're talking about potential kidney failure and other serious health problems related to that level of dehydration. A wound that we can't close, or large, maybe it's a laceration and the wound is gaping open. It's not bleeding that bad, Bleeding's not an issue, but the wound is gaping. There's a gap, and it won't stay. If we try to pinch it together, it won't stay pinched together. That would be another one. Skin penetrations. I know some of you are out there thinking, a splinter, really? Well, the reason to take them in for a skin penetration is to get them a tetanus booster. Or for some guys, maybe they've never had a tetanus shot. We need to get them in for a tetanus shot. And a tetanus shot, for safety managers out there who are worried about recordability, tetanus shot does not make an injury recordable. And a lot of eye treatments do not make an injury recordable. X-rays do not make an injury recordable if the X-rays are negative. A simple diagnosis by a medical professional that doesn't mean it's going to be recordable. Now, if there's a diagnosis of a significant injury or illness, then it could be recordable. But if you go in for evaluation and all the tests come back negative and the X-rays are negative, or they do, maybe a tetanus shot, none of that stuff's recordable. So but again, that should not be your concern anyway. Recordability should not be your concern. These are some types of injuries where first aid may be adequate. But again, always err on the side of caution. Minor cuts and scrapes where the bleeding is easily controlled and the cuts can be closed, and they'll stay closed. Always, you got to be careful with infection. You got to make sure the wound's cleaned, disinfected, proper first aid supplies are available and used to treat the wound. A low impact injury. A low impact injury would be somebody hits their knee on the side of a truck, or what happens, and some of you have probably done it. You're walking past the back of a truck and you hit your knee on the receiver hitch. Very painful, but not likely to cause severe injury most of the time. It's a low impact kind of injury. Again, painful, but the pain goes away and it's not likely to be a serious injury. First degree burns, a minor smash, hit with a hammer, hit their thumb with a hammer, or other type of smash injury to the extremities. The way I would always do a simple evaluation of a smash injury, let's say a smash to the hand, I'd have them wiggle their fingers. If they can wiggle their fingers without pain, or only insignificant levels of pain, minor levels of pain, they probably don't have anything broken. But if you're not sure, if there's any indication that, hey, maybe something is broken, it is best, not probably, it is best to get them checked out. And also with these minor smash injuries, again, wiggle fingers, wiggle toes, maybe something was dropped on their foot, bucket of bolts or whatever was dropped on their foot. And if it's their foot, you want to take your shoe off. Let's take a look at it. Wiggle your toes. Stand up. Are you able to stand up and put your full weight on it? Also, go back, do that initial evaluation, and everything seems good. Go back 10, 15 minutes later and check them out and see if things still seem like they're in good shape. Shallow contusions or bruises that are localized. Minor dehydration. Minor dehydration that was caught early, detected early, and you're able to actually prevent heat-related illness. Get them to a cool location, get them rest and liquids that they need, the shade that they need. Then that doesn't necessarily need a trip to the emergency room. First aid and CPR certification will look good on your resume. If you have a chance, a lot of our students will take first aid over in the physical education department. If you can take that class and get your certification, put that on your resume. That's going to look good on your resume. If you're not able to take that class, there's Red Cross First Aid, there's Oklahoma Safety Council, American Heart Association also is an organization that does first aid classes. something that would be even better than you being first aid certified, if you can get your trainer certification at some point. A lot of companies like to have their safety professionals trained so that they can do first aid training for everyone else in the company. And OSHA requires first aid training for if there needs to be first aid trained people within your organization. Workers need to always have access to someone who's first aid trained. I would always just take all of my frontline supervisors and get them first aid trained. And if there were other workers that wanted first aid training, we'd get them through the class also. Because I don't think you can ever have enough people first aid trained, and it's relatively inexpensive to get that training. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop here. When we come back, once we've evaluated the injuries, once they've received treatment, once the workers' compensation claim process has started, and maybe they're on the way to recovery, we still need to monitor those injuries as safety managers, keep an eye on things, and I'll talk more about that in the next video.